Hello everybody, today I would like to talk about a use case we did this year in Guatemala. Only a few pyramids peak above the canopy of the Guatemalan jungle in Central America, but most of the ancient ruins are still hidden by the dense canopy of the rainforest. Pyramids, roads, bridges, palaces and small dwellings have been lost for centuries. Quantum Systems sponsored an expedition to Guatemala in April 2022, and we teamed up with scientists of the University San Carlos in Guatemala and the University of Jaén in Spain to support with modern UAVs and airborne UAV LiDAR, our Cube 240, to map huge forest areas within the Yaksha National Park. This presentation will present the mission, and of course I will share initial preliminary results. Guatemala is located in Central America between Mexico, Belize and Honduras and El Salvador. The National Park Yaksha, our project area, is located in the north, very close to the Belize border. The national park has an extension of 38,000 hectares or 380 square kilometers. But before we will have a closer look at the project area, I would like to give you some basic information about the Maya civilization and our mission objectives. The history of Guatemala begins with the Maya colonization, about 1000 before Christ to 250 after Christ. And there are more than 57 known Maya sites in Guatemala. And the most famous ones are Tikal, Yaksha, Nacum, Naranjo and El Mirador. And 3 of them are in the Yaksha National Park. So let's look at our 2 mission objectives. The archaeologists ask us to survey the 3 most important Maya sites within this national park: Yaksha, Nacum and Naranjo. Why? Because the existing maps are not very sophisticated without geographic reference, and more or less it's just like a sketch or an archaeological drawing. For this mission objective we planned 3 LiDAR flights and 3 RGB oblique payload missions. In addition to that, the archaeologists have been interested to find new and unknown Maya sites under the canopy of the dense rainforest. And we at Quantum, we knew that we can penetrate the vegetation with our Cube 240 LiDAR designed by Yellowscan. The only question was how to plan the big search. Time on site was limited and only to a few days. Weather was quite unpredictable, and in the tropical climate we had to plan with different weather. So the size of the national park is huge, and we knew that we can only cover a maximum of 3,000 hectares of the entire 38,000 hectares. This is less than 10%. And finally we decided to fly search transects. Why? Because archaeologists have a long tradition in working with transects. But what are we exactly looking for? We are looking for embedded and partly embedded features. The roots of the ruins run a lot deeper than it looks, so it's all about creating a proper DTM and doing a relief analysis with GIS software. Let's look at the workflow. There are a few main steps, but we as Quantum Systems have only been involved in step number 1 and step number 2. Step number 1, we planned and executed the LiDAR survey. We did the raw data processing with the Yellowscan cloud station, and we used a new cloud station mission to do the strip adjustment. So we run the automatic ground point classification in step 2. There was a manual reclassification to make sure that the existing pyramids or other structures are not classified as non-ground points. At this point I would like to thank Pierre Chaponier for his help to do this reclassification. Yaksha developed into the largest city in the eastern Petén Lakes region during the late pre-classic 350 before Christ, and expanded to an enormous city during the early classic, from 250 after Christ to 600 after Christ approximately. As mentioned, we planned 3 flights with the LiDAR and 3 flights with the oblique RGB payload to map those sites. This was quite easy with the Trinity F90 Plus and the 60 up to 90 minutes of flight time. For the corridor mapping, the transects, we came up with a very crazy idea when looking at the map and the location of the existing sites. There's Yaksha, there's Nacum and there's Naranjo. And if we connect these 3 sites, we get a perfect triangle. And even greater, When we add more sites of Carmen and Colaridia, we get even a bigger triangle. The archaeologists and the local people told us that there is a strong evidence that the Maya has planned their cities based on astronomy and the position of the stars in the sky. When connecting Daneb, Vega and Altair, we get exactly the same dimensions. Wow! Might just be a coincidence? Anyway, the team was sure we can have to follow the lines of the triangle for the corridor mapping, and so we finally decided to fly the 4 transects, each transect 3 up to 4 times, shifted towards the inner side of the triangle with a 50% overlap. More details on the flight planning later. But what we immediately realized was this will not work within line of sight. Takeoff and landing was only possible at the lake near the jungle lodge or inside the Yaksha site. So there are no roads to Nakum or Naranjo, and therefore we had to fly the Trinity on really long distances. Our challenges: long distances, hot temperatures, unpredictable weather within the long distance, high risk of thunderstorms, and of course the dense vegetation with hilly terrain. With the Trinity F90 Plus and the Cube 240 LiDAR, we had the right tools for that mission. The Trinity performed all missions without any problem, and so did the Cube 240 payload. For the Cube 240, I would like to mention the 6 most important specs. Low weight, long flight time, 240,000 shots, 3 echoes, a precision of 2 cm and an accuracy of 3 cm. I forgot there's another important fact. It's a yellow scan 1 bottom solution. If you are out in the wilderness and you highly will appreciate an easy operation without Wi-Fi, without Bluetooth, Ethernet cables and so on, just flying and collecting the data. Some more important facts. The field of view was 70.4 degrees, but with our Cubase 3D flight planning software, it's doing all overlap and point density calculations for the user. Quite easy. At 20 meters per second flight speed, in about 100 meters above ground, the point density is around 80 points per square meter. However, we try to fly below 100 meters to get best possible results. The mission planning was pretty easy. We just selected the right aircraft and the Cube 240 payload, and we started the flight planning. Let's first of all focus on the 3 LiDAR missions to map the existing sites. Yaksha was pretty close in 5 kilometer distance, while the other 2 sites are in a distance of about 15 kilometers. Most important for the success of the missions, the 5 Ps. That's what I learned from a friend within the US Navy when doing the UAV training with his team. Proper planning prevents pissed performance. Super important when out in the jungle. Here we can see the flight plan for the Yaksha LiDAR survey. It's a 5 kilometer distance to the site. The size of the area is 117 hectares. The total flight time was only 36 minutes, and we can clearly see the terrain following in the plot. The commanded altitude was 90 meters above ground and the maximum tree heights 40 up to 60 meters. So we have been just 30 meters above the canopy. Here we can see the flight plan for the Nakum LiDAR survey. 15 kilometer distance to the site. The size of the area is only 75 hectares, but the total flight time was 43 minutes. This is showing the target area for Nakum in 15 kilometer distance. Again, we can see the comfort of having an automatic 3D terrain following feature. We can also identify the important calibration turn just before arrival at the mapping area. And here, finally, we can see the flight plan for Naranjo LiDAR survey in 15 kilometer distance to the site. And the size of this area is 23 hectares. The total flight time was 39 minutes. The target area of Naranjo is in 15 kilometer distance, and it's a pretty small site compared to Yaksha and Nakum. As explained earlier, we planned 7 corridor missions to split the triangle in 2 parts for the flight time and safety reasons. The first part of the triangle we flew 4 times, and here we can see the flight plan for the first flight. These are 43 kilometers flight path, covering an area of 220 hectares with one path in 40 minutes. This mission is highlighting again the importance of 3D flight planning. It's important to keep the LiDAR at a maximum 100 meters above ground and to be also safe above the terrain at a constant speed of 60 kilometers per hour. The second part of the triangle we flew 3 times, and this is the flight plan for the first round. Again, 45 kilometers of flight path covering an area of 180 hectares with one path in 48 minutes. Then it was time to fly, and this video should give you some impressions. Very small place for takeoff and landing in the site of Yaksha. So technically it was pretty easy to do all these missions, daily takeoffs and landings, and all went like a charm. After the flight, we transferred the data from the USB stick and from the Eyebase base station. The Eyebase was not on a perfect position, but in the best position we could use. On a floating but well-anchored, pretty stable platform, we put the Eyebase on the center of a table. And every day exactly on the same spot. Yes, the platform might slowly move 2 up to 5 centimeters, but there wasn't any other or better location outside the forest. The last 2 days we even used this platform for takeoff and landing, after the owner covered his lake water pool for us. Raw data processing was done on site right after landing with a second laptop powered by a generator, while the Trinity was on mission for the next flight. After creating an SPAD file with the Applanix Postpack software, we processed the raw data in CloudStation and exported the LAS files after automatic terrain classification. This is the Yaksha dataset, and this is the small Naranjo dataset. Later we will look at the final results for Yaksha. But before we look at these results, I would like to show you how we managed to work with the 7 corridor mapping flights. You remember 4 runs around the triangle, part 1, and 3 rounds around the triangle, part 2. We actually have been waiting 2 months for getting our first beta release of CloudStation mission. This software is important when working with multiple overlapping missions. It's important when covering huge areas with multiple missions to use the strip adjustment not only for a single mission but also for the overlapping missions. For our project it was even more important as the single corridor flights do not even have a single overlap. Because there is no overlap. They are single flight paths, and with one path only we could not do an adjustment of the IMU drift. This is the point cloud for flight number 1. And then we added flight number 2, flight number 3, flight number 4, and flight number 5, flight number 6, and finally flight number 7. A perfect triangle and a perfect dense point cloud. And then we run the strip adjustment on all 4 overlapping flights. This helped a lot to increase the quality of the data, and finally we have been able to export one single LAS file for all 7 flights, including the terrain classification. Let's look at the mission summary for the LiDAR survey. We can see the flight path for all 12 missions. Yaksha, Nakum and Naranjo. Then we did another small site called Poza Maya with 2 flights in brown color, and finally you can see the blue flight paths for the 7 corridor mapping flights. 12 missions and 10 hours of flight time. What about the results of our RGB flights? Today I can't talk in detail about our additional RGB flights as this oblique payload hasn't been released yet. I just want to share a few impressions to wake you up. The upper image is showing a 3D point cloud processed from oblique RGB images with photogrammetry. And the lower image is a photo taken on site, on the ground, with my iPhone. This payload will be released shortly, but my dear friends at Yellowscane, don't worry. Photogrammetry doesn't work through vegetation, and data processing still takes a very, very long time. Let's focus again on the LiDAR data. With 12 flights, we captured 3.5 billion points and covered an area of 19 million square meters or 1,900 hectares. The table indicates that we surveyed 181 points per square meter in average. That means 11 ground points per square meter in average. But of course, it's not a regular grid. I think this is something we can work with, and now let's look at the first results. I would like to present the data for one of the existing sites. Let's look at Yaksha. Now we are looking at the colored digital terrain model with a hill shade overlay, and this dataset will be used by the archaeologists to proceed with the archaeological interpretation. In the upper right corner we can see the corresponding LiDAR point cloud with two classes for the blue clipping on the left side. Ground and vegetation. The ground points are colorized by elevation. Now I'm hiding the vegetation points and we can only see the ground points which have been used to interpolate the digital terrain model on the left side. The two little subsets in the right lower corner are showing the magic of LiDAR. Let's look at the point cloud in 3D. This is a short animation showing a small part of Yaksha point cloud. Intensity values, elevation values, with vegetation, without vegetation, and we can clearly see that we've been able to penetrate the tropical rainforest. Now I'm taking you for a flight over the 3D point cloud along the triangle between Yaksha, Nakum and Naranjo. This might be a secret causeway, a first finding. Then we are proceeding to the north. Now we are approaching Nakum. We can already see the pyramid of Nakum. Yes, making a right turn. Now we are heading towards the east. Now the terrain starts to become a little bit more hilly. And just before the arrival in Naranjo, we will see the pyramids of Naranjo. Now heading back to the west. Here we are now hitting the next transect. And some possible Maya structures. Finally, here they are. We can see elevation. There are some hills which don't like natural. They don't look natural. Here are some hills which don't look natural. In the GIS we processed a DTM and a hillshade for better visualization of the data. This is the entire dataset, but let's have more detailed look at it. We are starting the inspection of the digital terrain model at Yaksha, and then we move to the north. This is our first finding, a causeway through the jungle. Here we are spotting a river. And now we are reaching the archaeological site of Nakum. There is a possible embedded structure south of Nakum, an interesting circular structure in the east of Nakum. Not sure if these structures are known yet. Now we are moving to the east through untouched jungle. Here we can see some more possible embedded structures, maybe more lost pyramids. Moving on to the east we can see more discoveries and more. And far in the east we are now at Naranjo, where we can see the major pyramids. Let's now move to the southwest. Some possible findings here too. And this is a very interesting location. Playing with the contrast, or let's say with the scale of the color ramp, we can see a relief which looks so much geometric for a natural morphological feature. Probably we touched a new archaeological site. Now we are on the way back towards Yaksha, and we found isolated round and little structures, and I'm sure the archaeologist will go there and check. And this is all far away from the takeoff and landing location. The aircraft in the air for more than 60 minutes, 20 kilometers away from the pilot, and the LiDAR is spinning and spinning and spinning, and we are getting data and data and data, penetrating the jungle and finding more and more hidden features. As it is pretty close to Yaksha site, we believe that this last archaeological feature here is probably a known one. Let me shortly summarize the preliminary results of our mission to Guatemala. The Cube 240 is the right tool for archaeologists to search for embedded structures under dense vegetation. The Trinity F90 Plus is a workhorse and operates perfectly in tropical conditions. We identified 32 local relief anomalies on a 46-kilometer transect. Some of them might be embedded Maya structures. The archaeologists will do more analytics, and then they will probably plan an expedition for ground truthing. Thank you very much for your attention.